I want to talk to you about the tumultuous year that is unfolding in politics. Imagine being in the White House press corps covering all of these toxic politics and dealing with the pandemic. I talked today about that with one of the best. Behind me here, behind the posters, is the White House, and I'm joined here by Fox News Radio's White House correspondent, Jon Decker. Good to talk to you, John.
Oh, thanks a lot, Chris.
Very sad for me to see Washington, D.C. like this, the boarded up buildings, the boarded up White House. Is it a tense city to work in these days?
Well, I think it's tense just as we get closer to the election more than anything else. This area right here that we're speaking at is now just open to pedestrian traffic, and the reason being is because of, in the aftermath of all of the racial unrest, you see these posters that you just referenced. And you see, in addition to that, a lot of concern about what happens after Election Day, and that's why so many businesses have boarded up, fearing perhaps some sort of unrest in the wake of a result that they may not like.
It's such a worry, isn't it? And it's so disappointing, and let's hope for the best. I want to talk about the campaign and the pandemic. The Democrats have wanted to talk about the pandemic day in, day out, but the two candidates have been at polar opposites. You've got Donald Trump, massive campaign rallies, immune from COVID now. Joe Biden playing a very, very COVID-safe game.
And, you know, after the election is concluded, we'll know whether Joe Biden's strategy was either brilliant or boneheaded, as we might say here in America, in the sense that typically you're out on the campaign trail, you're meeting with your supporters, you're having rallies. That's what President Trump is doing. And as you mentioned, Chris, Joe Biden's not doing that at all. And, you know, it's a head scratcher for a lot of us that, you know, why isn't he out there visiting those so-called battleground states? But he wants to play it safe. He believes he has a lead that he wants to sit on, sort of wants to run out the clock, and we'll see if that works for him.
And as a reporter, COVID plays a big role in your life, more so, I suppose, than everybody else in this country. It is a massive issue, health crisis for the whole country. But you're tested repeatedly?
Yeah, I've probably been tested about 50 times since the start of the pandemic, and the reason being is that every time I enter the White House complex, every time I travel with the president, I obviously have to get a COVID test because I'm in such close proximity to the president. And so fortunately, I've tested negative each and every time. It gives you a sense of security, that's for sure, but it's a reminder every time I get tested of what we're all dealing with right now.
OK, let's talk about where the race is at this stage. There's no doubt that in the average of the published polls, there's a bit of a move on from Donald Trump. He is increasing his share of the vote according to the polls. Will it be enough? Will it come too late? 90 million people have already voted. What's your sense of where we're going in these final couple of days?
Well, I pay attention to the polls just like everybody, and Joe Biden appears to be leading in very critical battleground states. I think it's going to be an awfully close election. You know, I don't think it's a runaway election by any stretch of the imagination. It may come down to 3 states altogether, and Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. And interestingly enough, Chris, those are the same 3 states that decided the 2016 presidential election. If Hillary Clinton had won Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, she would have been elected president in 2016. And that's the reason why you see Joe Biden and President Trump traveling to these states with just 48 hours to go until Election Day.
Well, one of the incredible factors here is what's going to happen with the count. There are many counties in Pennsylvania that won't be counting mail-in votes till the day after the election. So that's going to be critical. What are the chances of being able to call the election on election night?
It's going to be difficult to do that. However, if we see results coming in from Florida, for instance, and President Trump does not win the state of Florida, that's really difficult for him, if that happens, to get to 270 electoral votes. It's just a critical state in terms of his path to 270. You mentioned the idea of not knowing election night. You have to keep in mind or recall that in 2000, America and the rest of the world didn't know who the next president of the United States was going to be until December the 13th of 2000. And that was the day that Al Gore ultimately conceded the race, 5 weeks after Election Day. So I think America should be patient. We've been through this before, and we can certainly do it again.
John, it's such a busy time for you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Fascinating times, so many moving parts. Don't touch that dial. We will be all over it this week in Washington.